I cannot tell you how excited I am to make this video right now. This is the first defense-related video I am doing this offseason on this main channel, and I gotta tell you guys, it can't come at a more perfect time. We've had some major free agent signings, and we're coming up on the NFL draft, so there's gonna be additions and subtractions on all these top defenses that were good in 2023. But now, we got to prepare for 2024 fantasy football. And that's what we're doing by going through the top 12 defense rankings for 2024 fantasy football. So let's go ahead and get right into it. At number 1, I really wanted to move them down because they were the number 1 defense in 2023. But there wasn't enough there for me to move them down. I got the Cowboys defense once again, reigning supreme as the best defense in football. So here's the thing about the Dallas Cowboys, right? The reason I wanted to move them down is because they got rid of Dan Quinn. Well, they didn't get rid of him, but he became a head coach, obviously. And so he's no longer the defensive coordinator. He was probably the best defensive coordinator in all of the last several seasons in all of the NFL. They also lost guys like Dante Fowler. And guys, I mean, a lot of their secondary has still remained unsigned. So what are they doing exactly to remedy that? And why are they still at number 1? Well, obviously they've still got key guys like Micah Parsons, right? And they've got DeMarcus Lawrence. They've got a lot of guys still on that front 7 that are really shoring up that defense, gonna be able to get them a lot of sacks. I mean, last year they had a total of 46 sacks, which is okay, but they're so turnover heavy. Now, the thing that I liked is that they added Mike Zimmer as their defensive coordinator. Mike Zimmer, maybe not the best head coach, but that guy can coach a defense. Mike Zimmer will get this team ready to go. They also re-signed Carl Davis at the defensive tackle position. And I'm thinking if they can get maybe like Jordan Lewis back or Stephon Gilmore back, or just draft a corner really high, their secondary is going to look good still because they've got a good secondary coach. So I really like the Cowboys still. I think they're going to be good once again because they're going to come in and play really physical. They're going to come in, create turnovers. And I do think that the Cowboys will continue to hold their spot at number 1 in 2024 fantasy football. Number 2, the Baltimore Ravens defense also is going to stand pat here at the number 2 position. So the Baltimore Ravens also had some big losses already this offseason. Now, I want to just say this really quick. We're filming this on Tuesday, March 12th. So about a full week ahead of time, I am filming this because I have prior obligations to attend to during the time you're watching this video. So I wanted to make sure I put it out there, and there also has been a lot of moves made already through free agency. They lost Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen, coming off his best season as an NFL pro, lost him to their rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They also lost guys like Ronald Darby. And most importantly, arguably, they lost Mike Macdonald. The defensive coordinator is now the head coach over in Seattle. What's going to happen here when they've got Zach Orr, former player for them, as their new defensive coordinator? And not only that, all of their position coaches on defense at every level of the defense. Defensive line, linebackers, and the secondary, they've got a whole new coaching staff. So what's going to happen? Well, here's the reason that they're number 2. I'm simply banking on the fact that they're going to be in a position where the Ravens are going to come in and just play physical defense like they always do. That's just the Ravens' DNA right there. So yes, Jadeveon Clowney's still out there. Rock Ya-Sin, Darrell Worthy are still out there. Baltimore's going to be fine. They're a defensive culture, and they're going to rebound perfectly. Like you never even knew that Mike Macdonald left. I have lots of confidence in the Ravens doing that. The Buffalo Bills are at number 3, also holding their spot from last year. And really, it's the top 3 teams. They have such a good defensive culture. That's why they're holding pat. That's the main reason. Like additions in the offseason through free agency, they get a lot of hype around this time of year. But really, there's not too many impactful signings at these major defensive positions when it comes to free agency. The Bills got Nicholas Morrow so far, and they lost Leonard Floyd and Jordan Poyer. Micah Hyde's still unsigned as well. So their secondary going to experience some, maybe pushback for the guys that they're letting go. But they've still got Sean McDermott coaching up that defense. They've still got a defensive-leaning culture. They also got guys like Kyer Elam, who are still developing as well. So they've got young pieces on that defense, And again, they're just so physical. 54 sacks last year and 18 interceptions. Very turnover prone. So this defense is going to continue to get after you. I don't really worry about the Bills defense, and I don't think you should either for 2024 fantasy football. Now, speaking of big free agent signings, this, in my opinion, I'm talking including Josh Jacobs, including Saquon Barkley, including Kirk Cousins and Derrick Henry. I think the biggest addition to any team was Christian Wilkins. And who did he get signed by? The Las Vegas Raiders. They're here at number 4. Now, the Raiders were already coming in hot at the end of 2023 fantasy football. They obviously had that massive game against the Chargers that got Brandon Staley fired, and they had some other big games as well against division rivals like the Chiefs. I gotta tell you, they're turning into a legitimate defensive culture. They're making moves right now. Christian Wilkins is a massive defensive signing. This is one of the biggest defensive signings I've seen in years. Christian Wilkins was arguably Miami's second best player behind Tyreek Hill. This is a defensive tackle that is going to pair so nicely with Max Crosby. They are shoring up the trenches on the defensive side of the ball, and the rest of their team is going to grow so much from that. That alone is huge. I can't overstate it. You cannot overstate this. Yeah, they lost Bilal Nichols on the defensive line, Jerry Artillery as well. When you're getting Christian Wilkins, it doesn't matter. This is a massive, massive move. This is going to help that sack number, which, by the way, wasn't terrible. 46 sacks last year overall, and it's going to force more forced errors and turnovers on the defensive side of the ball when they're playing opposing quarterbacks who are mistake prone. 13 interceptions last year. Expect that number to rise up to like 15 or 16. The Raiders defense is coming. Antonio Pierce is setting a defensive culture, and it starts at the line of scrimmage, and he's got 2 major disruptors with Max Crosby and now Christian Wilkins. I love the Raiders this year. The 49ers defense is at number 5. Now, the 49ers defense, if you just name off their roster, there's a lot of guys that you can name off, right? Like, they're talent heavy and they've got big name players. Well, they were the number 10 defense last year. And you look at who they've lost. They lost Steve Wilks, the defensive coordinator. They lost Cleveland Farrell. Javon Kinlaw was a big loss. And they had to do that basically for financial reasons, but that's still a big loss on their team. So why are they rising up 5 spots? Well, I think a lot of people may forget this, and a lot of people will remember this. Steve Wilks was not a good defensive coordinator. He was just not very good. So getting rid of Steve Wilks was addition by subtraction. You know, the moment that they were going to get rid of him was in that Super Bowl versus the Chiefs, when Kyle Shanahan had to call a timeout late in the game to basically say you're running the wrong defense on a key 3rd down. When the offensive coach is making that call, that guy's fired. And it happened very soon after the Super Bowl. Now, they added guys like Nick Sorensen as the defensive coordinator. They added Leonard Floyd to be, helpful on the edge. He's in the later part of his career. Yetur Gross-Matos on the edge as well, and Jordan Elliott. So you know that they're going to invest big at the line of scrimmage. The 49ers are also getting Ufunga back. That's a massive piece of the back end of that defense. They're going to have Fred Warner back. Now, Greenlaw, that's a loss, especially the way he went down in the Super Bowl by just running off the field, tearing an Achilles. The 49ers defense, I believe, they're going to just get it together this year, because I do think that a lot of their problems last year were related to guys like Steve Wilks. I don't care if they signed back Randy Gregory or Chase Young. It'd probably be maybe helpful, but really, at the end of the day, I think the major problem on the team was Steve Wilks. Number 6, the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns last year were obviously very steady. Defensively, they were the number 5 defense in fantasy football, and they've had to make some, tough business decisions, but really they've kept most of their defense intact. Like, they've lost Jordan Elliott, they lost Michael Ford, they lost Anthony Walker Jr., and Teron Harmon is still on side. But they got Jordan Hicks at the linebacker position to help shore up the middle of that defense, and I think that the Browns obviously still have their major playmakers. Denzel Ward, they've got Myles Garrett as well, and some developing guys in the secondary as well. So Browns overall, they don't really move much defensively because they just didn't really make too many moves and they didn't lose too many key guys. And their coaching staff is, of course, still intact. Their physical defense is going to get after you. And a full healthy season with Myles Garrett is always going to be scary for opponents. Number 7, the New York Jets. Now, the Jets have dropped a little bit. They dropped 3 spots. They were the number 4 defense in 2023. And they lost Bryce Huff, who was actually really good. Like, Bryce Huff is a key loss for the Jets. That's not a good loss to sustain. He broke out last year. But they did get, Javon Kinlaw, who is going to help. That's going to help them a lot in the line of scrimmage. They got Leki Fotu as well, the defensive tackle position. So they've made some good additions. Carl Lawson's still inside. Solomon Thomas, they're probably not going to bring him back. The Jets, really, it's a culture thing. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's a culture thing for me. I really worry about their culture. I don't think they're a great culture. Lots of talent, especially the youth. I mean, they've got Quinton Williams still is in the prime of his career. They got his brother who's actually looking good. Sauce Gardner's shoring up that, manning up the cornerback slot. They've got key guys. They're going to remain in the top 12. I'd prefer defenses like the Browns, though, as well over them. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense at number 8. Now, the Steelers defense have made some moves as well. The Steelers team has made some moves this offseason. They got Patrick Queen from the Ravens. That's a big loss for the Ravens and a big gain for the Steelers. That's going to be automatically their top linebacker right there. 3 years, $41 million contract. Patrick Queen's a big gain for the Steelers. Now, they lost Patrick Peterson. They lost Keanu Neal. They cut both those guys because Keanu Neal couldn't pass a physical, and Patrick Peterson is obviously on the way out of the NFL. So I don't really think those are big losses. Levi Wallace is unsigned. Who cares? Get him out of the building. He's no good anyways. So Quan Alexander, I think they could use him back. But of course, the Steelers defense is going to continue to do what they always do. They've got TJ Watt, so 47 sacks is going to happen again. They've got Minka Fitzpatrick coming off an injury-riddled season, but 16 interceptions, you could probably expect close to that number again. 18 forced fumbles, yeah, you could still expect that as well. So the Steelers defense, you're going to get a lot of crappy games from them. They're going to take a dump on you, but they're also going to provide you some massive big boom games when you probably least expect it. The Chiefs defense at number 9. The Chiefs defense was such a roller coaster in 2023 fantasy football. It's honestly funny to talk about them because for a long time, I stuck with them through the mud and they were dragging me along with them because I just kept burying my head in the sand and saying, no, they're still a good defense. And they had a bad stretch and then they turned out to be great. And one of the primary reasons they won the Super Bowl. Well, in fantasy football, they didn't end the year particularly well. They haven't made any key additions. They really haven't lost anyone aside from Willie Gay Jr. That's a big loss. I get it. They had to keep L'Jarius Sneed. That's an elite corner right there. But Willie Gay Jr. is a big loss for the Chiefs. Now, obviously, they got their boy wonder back, which is Chris Jones. That's their bread and butter right there. He's if not one of the best defensive player in the game. Chris Jones, as long as he's there, they're going to continue to dominate at the line of scrimmage. And the Chiefs defense is not exactly the defense that's going to give you like big boom games all the time, but they're going to be very steady, around 8 fantasy points per game, and going to continue to be sack monsters because of Chris Jones changing the game up front. So the Chiefs defense is still going to be a top 10 defense in 2024 fantasy football. The Colts defense at number 10. The Colts defense is obviously very good. Colts defense, I really was big on them last year, and they finished kind of poorly. I didn't really like how they finished. They were the number 11 defense, and they really haven't lost or gained anything this offseason. This is just me saying that I think that with DeForest Buckner still there in the trenches right here, and with some developing players in the back 7, you've got some guys that are going to be really good on this defense again, and they're going to be turnover machines. They're not going to hold you to 15, 17, 20 points a game, but they will get turnovers. And that's what helped them a lot. 16 forced fumbles, 15 interceptions, and 51 sacks. Those are big fantasy football numbers. Colts defense is going to do it again. The Texans defense is going to be in the top 12 this year. Count on it. Massive development on key players. Derek Stingley at the cornerback position already became elite last year. Will Anderson, he's going to become a very, very good player, if not elite, in 2024. Massive additions as well. Danielle Hunter from the Minnesota Vikings, multi-Pro Bowler. Now he's in Houston. Danico Autry, also helping shore up the front seven. They got him now. Jeff Okudah, probably a slot cornerback if anything, but they got him. Michael Ford and Lonnie Johnson as well. They lost Jonathan Greenard, which is not great, but the Houston Texans defense, the youth on this team excites me. And D'Amico Ryans excites me as well. Count on the Texans being a really good fantasy football defense in 2024. The Saints defense rounding it out at 12. Now, the Saints defense is similar to the Chiefs, where it's like they're not going to really excite you too many weeks. Not too many big boom games. They're going to be pretty steady. Like 34 sacks last year, that was one of the lowest in the league. They need to figure out how to shore that up because they didn't make any additions to the edge position, so they need to draft a top guy in this year's draft. They got Willie Gay Jr. from the Chiefs, which is a big signing. That's going to shore up the middle of their defense. They didn't lose anyone too crazy. They've still got top players. The Saints defense is also well coached defensively as well. So count on them just being kind of steady for you most of the time. Not too many bad weeks, but not too many great weeks. They'll be middle of the pack, and that's why they'll finish at number 12 in 2024 fantasy football. As always, let me know what you think of these rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered about these defenses for 2024 fantasy football. And if you want to see the top 30 running backs for 2024 fantasy football, click on this video right here.